Yo, what's good? I'm Marcus. I appreciate everybody tuning in. And this thing is going slow as I don't know what. Yo, what's good? I'm Marcus. I appreciate everybody tuning in. You're at the channel, The Debt Free Dad, where we're talking finances, financial takes, financial topics, current events, attorney reactions, all of that stuff. I always got to start out by putting a disclaimer out there. Hey, I'm a licensed attorney, but I'm not your attorney. So this isn't legal advice, financial advice, just giving my opinion and takes on topics and letting y'all know what we got going on in the DFD's household as my family is on our path to financial freedom. Now, this is an interesting video because I wasn't set to come on and do a live, but I saw something that caught my eye. And yes, there is a financial nexus. We're going to talk a little bit about charities, giving to charitable donations and fraud. Y'all know, hey, if I had my area of expertise is financial crimes, frauds, investigations, all of that type of stuff. So when I saw this article about Russell Wilson, I thought it was actually kind of interesting and it could be a good topic to dive into. Now, before we get into the meat and potatoes of the stories, what is the financial nexus related to this story? Bottom line is, hey, when you're given to a charitable organization, most times people have no clue if that money is being used for what the organization alleges, says that they're going to use it for. So a lot of it is gambling. So just from things that I do to make sure the charitable organization is legit. I think thing number one, you can always do open source research to check the background of the organization, see how long the organization has been around. And one of the main things that I use is I find the proportion of income that they're giving to the actual charity versus what they take as some type of profit, even though they're technically nonprofits. Why do I do this? Because most legit organizations are really upfront with what they donate to the actual charity. They'll say, hey, for every dollar we get, 65% goes to helping A, B, and C. The remaining funds we use for administrative costs to include salaries, building upkeep, outreach and things like that. So that's always a good telltale sign. When you find an organization who's really transparent about what they're doing with the money, most times, not all the time, but most time that leads towards them being legit in that space that they're operating in. Now, my expertise in this area, where does it come from? My expertise in this area comes from I've been in the game for 13 years and some change now as a defense attorney, as a prosecutor, as an attorney who led multiple investigations dealing with financial crimes. I represented people who had multi-million dollar Ponzi schemes. So when it comes to finances and scheming money from a government entity, a bank, anything, I'm really well versed in it. So let's go ahead, dive into this article to see what Russell Wilson has going on. Now, again, all of these are allegations. So you come here, I'm gonna give y'all the straight facts that I got from open source research. They're allegations. Russell Wilson, they're accused of fraud. He's not been found guilty of committing fraud. And so far, the only people that he stole money from was the Denver Broncos because he played like trash this year. But let's dive into this article. Let me go ahead, cue this up so we can go through this article. I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on, and I'm going to give my take on what the legal arguments are going to be on both sides of this. And again, this is early on, so I'm just going with the open source research, the information that we got offhand. All right. Russell Wilson is the MVP of scamming people with his charity. Now, of course, this is a big red flag because we already know that the welfare queen Brett Favre stole millions of dollars from poor people in the poorest state in the nation. So again, NFL probably wouldn't look into this. Well, they might because it might violate some type of morality clause, and he's an active player. But hey, it's a bad look to have a Hall of Famer accused of fraud, and to subsequently have someone who won a Super Bowl who was once a star player in this league being accused of fraud as well. All right, Russell Wilson is shout out to my son. He was the one who recommended I use that shock future face in the thumbnail. I thought that was an interesting take on things. All right, Russell Wilson is struggling as a quarterback, but he's absolutely rolling when it comes to scamming donors to his charity. A ranging report from USA Today published on Wednesday outlined that Wilson's Why Not You Foundation, that's a terrible name for an organization that steals money. Why Not You? Why Not You Foundation had only donated approximately 40% of its earnings to charity, with the rest going to fundraising and employee salaries. Now, I'm going to just go through this article before I dive into my thoughts on it. In total, Russ Foundation received $7.5 million in revenue through 2021, but only reported $2.8 million being passed on to any charitable activities. And the expenses of the foundation includes a six-figure salary for a personal friend of Russell and Ciara Wilson, who is an employee of the foundation, but digging deeper goes further than that. The website for Why Not You doesn't list any employees or a CEO, but does show its board of directors. This is essentially a who's who of nepotism. Not a single member of the charity's board has a nonprofit background, but rather they all share personal connections to Russ and Ciara. The total list includes, this is terrible, Russell Wilson sits on the board, Ciara sits on the board, Cheryl Willard, Russ' longtime personal lawyer. I'm going to blame her for all the unorganization that I see right now. Cheryl Willard, I'm probably going to place this blame on you if you're the longtime lawyer. Larry Estrada, VP at Goldman Sachs, personal friend of Russ. Mark Rogers, Russ' agent and close friend. Harry Wilson, Russ's brother. Jessica Abramson, Lot, Russ's PR manager. This is just getting worse and worse as I read it. Charles Martin, former Seahawks receiver who played with Russ. Scott Pickett, Russ, close friends. It is not uncommon for celebrity charities to have board members with personal ties to the founders, but it's atypical not to have anyone running the show with a traditional charity background. Furthermore, Wilson's charity, I had a list. Wilson's charity raises specific questions because it was used as a key reason Wilson won the Walter Payton Man of the Year award in 2020, with Roger Goodell saying, Russell Wilson has always prioritized serving his community, but this year he met the challenge and more when it is needed most, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell said. He has shown continued excellence, blah, blah, blah. His Why Not Foundation bolster its lasting legacy. Russ is extremely deserving of this award, and I know he will use this as an additional springboard to continue to positively impact others. Essentially, the basis of Russ winning the award and any justification by the NFL was the work that Wilson did with his charity, which we now know went more towards benefiting his family and friends than the needy children it purports to help. That's terrible to his children. On Wednesday night, the Why Not You Foundation posted a lengthy response to the US Today story, which said in part, while the foundation raises funds to provide grants and gifts, our partnerships have allowed for more direct delivery and impact. Our dynamic partnerships allow for Russell and Ciara to give their time. This is a terrible fucking statement to write. Their time, passion, and ideas, and raise awareness for causes in immediate and hands of settings and events. So basically, they didn't refute anything in the report, which is why I said it was terrible, but tried to suggest that because Russ and Ciara turn up at events for other charities, that's where their true impact is. Yeah, that's pretty terrible. Typically, this wouldn't be an issue with the NFL that the NFL would look into, but between Brett Favre using his football fame to allegedly embezzle welfare funds from Mississippi and the league essentially legitimizing Wilson's dicey charity by awarding him the Walter Payton Man of the Year award, it raises serious questions about how much the league is doing to vet charitable work players are doing, or whether they're simply taking everything at face value. Wilson needs to answer for why this charity, which has brought in millions has not given more to people it claims to be helping. This is a travesty. All right, that was a pretty interesting. Oh, I blame the lawyer completely. If you're a friend and longtime attorney, if you're sitting on the board, I'm assuming that if this is your longtime attorney, she probably had looked at the documentation that made up the board of this 509c whatever, this charitable organization. She looked at the compensation the same way with any business. You will have a partnership agreement and it'll lay out the terms of compensation, how the profits would be distributed to what charities, when the distributions would be made. And the fact that they had such a low percentage of their monies going to charities raises a red flag with me, which I'm going to point directly at the attorney because she should have known better. And also the fact that the board of directors didn't have anyone experienced and that 100% of the people either had a familial tie or some type of other relationship. A lot of times in these types of cases, um, I guess it's not uncommon for a charitable organization headed by a celebrity for the celebrity to literally not know anything that's going on in the charity. Now, if that was the case, I think it would be really favorable for Russell Wilson and Sierra because okay, this is our organization. We essentially act as the face of the organization and we make public appearances on behalf of this organization, but we aren't tied intricately into the day to day operations. The smart way to do it would have been to hire someone who had experiences with charitable organizations to set up all the structure. Russell Wilson should probably take himself off as the board of directors or just have his wife on and not have himself on. That would probably be a more favorable way that I think it should have been structured. But the fact that he has the friends and family plan, and the friends and family plan is exactly what it is. When you look on the board and you see most of the friends and families, it's kind of analogous to the Black Lives Matter Foundation. Everybody like, oh man, Black Lives Matter. They do so much in the community. But when you look on the board of directors for the Black Lives Matter organization, they have what I refer to as the friends and family plan, where a lot of friends and family sit on these boards and get large ass salaries. So just looking at the structure just looking at the organizational structure it's going to be a problem for Sierra and Russell Wilson. Just because they sit on the board of directors, they are the people who should be in the know as to how the organization is working. Now, I will tell you, just this article in and of itself doesn't necessarily mean that something fraudulent is going on. Where the meat and potatoes is going to come in is, the first thing I would do, I mean, if I was looking at this, I would actually look at all the people's salary that they're getting, these $200,000 salaries, and I would match that up with time records to see how much work is actually being done. That's where they're going to find a lot of the, hey, y'all guilty as hell, or hey, y'all not guilty as hell. They're going to look at the HR process. I would like to know how these people were vetted to actually sit on this board. How was his brother vetted? Did his brother have any relevant experience that would bring anything important to this? Hey, what's going on? Appreciate you joining in, sis. So that's the first thing. We have to look at how these people were vetted. I'm just going to assume when you got brothers and stuff like that, a lot of times celebrities try to put their brothers in a position where they can do something but make a good income but not work too hard. You know what I mean? It reminds me of Eddie Murphy put his brother in charge of security, and then he realized that was problematic because you can't have your older brother in charge of security because everybody going to get punched in the mouth because that's your little brother. But it's not uncommon for celebrities, for politicians. You see it a lot with politicians. A lot of times with politicians, prosecutors, what they'll do is, I have X amount of money to hire for staff. And what they'll do is, I have $100,000 to pay for executive assistant. You know what? I'm going to hire somebody part-time, pay them $70,000, keep $30,000 for something else, and they don't really have to come into work as long as they kick back some of that money. So that's kind of the name of how these things go. It's going to be a problem. It's a problem because of the organizational structure, because they're in positions where they should have known better. That's point number one. Point number two, once they start asking people questions, people are going to do exactly what people always do in these situations: start talking, start telling the truth, and start trying to weasel their way out of it. Because the question here is going to be, is it could be fraud, but it could not be criminal fraud. It could be that, yeah, they committed some things that have very bad optics and denote fraud, but was there an actual criminal intent to defraud the people out of this money? So it's going to come down to having some type of crazy ass accounting records to see where everything goes and how everything is structured. But yeah, 90% of this blame is going on the attorney, because the attorney should have had the wherewithal to, your sole job, if I'm your personal attorney, is to reduce your liability and exposure in everything. I'm talking about, if you get married, I got to give you counsel as, hey, this is what you got to do to limit your risk, because 55% of marriages ended up in divorce. If you're starting a business, this is how you should structure it to limit your risk. If you're starting a charitable organization, you need to structure it like this and have these people in place. So if something happened, you have some type of installation where you can refer to as, plausible deniability. Hey, I do. This is my organization, but I don't have anything to do with the leadership role. I task that out with someone who has a plethora of experience in charitable organizations and running these type of 503c companies. And because of that, that separates you from the BS. The fact that him and his wife is sitting on the board of directors is a problem. The other thing is, it's probably never a good idea in general to have both husband and wife sitting on the board in any business, especially if it's structured like this where it doesn't pass the smell test. And the reason why is because anytime you have a husband and wife who are engaged in fraud and they're under investigation, it's going to put them in a position where you want to have one person in that relationship to have some to be within arm's length of, or outside of arm's length of, any transaction. So if I had a charitable organization, the same way, like, okay, I don't plan on committing fraud, but for my personal company that I have, I don't have my wife listed as a CEO or someone who's running the HR department. No, I don't need her to be listed in that formalized capacity for anything that's being done. Especially if it's something that smells as funky as this, you don't want to have you and your spouse caught up both within the investigation. You always want to have at least one spouse to be at away outside of arm's reach. So if something comes down, you could potentially be in a position to do some type of transfer or something to that effect that may be able to save and protect the assets. Not trying to tell anybody how to get away, but it is what it is, right? Now, the interesting thing that's going to be interesting is, if it's criminal, will prosecutors, or if it is fraud, will prosecutors be able to come after their personal assets? And, a lot of times when we start these LLCs, you see people all the time. If you start an LLC, you're protected. Nobody can come and take your property. They can only take the property of the LLC. That's true, but it's not correct. And this is a perfect example of a concept that's called piercing the corporate veil. Why is it called piercing the corporate veil? And I don't know if I talked about this before, but essentially you have a corporation and there's a veil that covers that corporation that protects the corporate assets from you. This is the veil, this microphone. The corporation sits on that side. You sit on this side. If the corporation does something bad, generally you can't go between this veil and remove it to get to your personal assets. However, if there's fraud involved, if there's any evidence that the corporation or the corporate entity was being used as an independent vehicle for the owners, then they can pierce that corporate veil. And not only can they go after that corporation, but they can go after you personally for your personal assets. So that's something that is also going to be an issue that's going to come up. Now, this is very early on. This was just an investigation that was done by a media outlet. So, when an investigation is done by a media outlet, they don't necessarily have the subpoena powers that a federal or a state agency would have. So, right now, I tend to give them the benefit of the doubt, just because, even though I think the structure is freaking terrible. The structure of this organization is probably the worst structure you could ever see ever. But even though this structure is terrible, them giving up 40 something percent to charitable organizations may not necessarily be fraudulent. But the test is going to be when accounting is done on the salaries that were given, the amount of work that was given for those particular salaries. That's when it's going to be interesting. I'm gonna just go out on a limb, and I'm guessing that I don't know if they were smart, they would probably have their board of directors set up on a salary scale, so that way it doesn't necessarily require them to put a lot of time in to get their compensation. So if they have them on a salary based system, that gives a little bit of strength to their argument, because hey, I work on a salary. I may have 10 hours of work to do. I may have 3 hours of work to do. I'm just on a salary. I'm here as on an as needed basis. So that could be one thing that gives them some protection. But hey, it's been a rough year for Russell Wilson. He looked terrible on the field. He's probably on the verge of getting cut if he doesn't do a good job. NFL contracts aren't guaranteed. And now this comes up. And it's very taxing, because Russell Wilson is somebody who built his brand and built his identity on being this squeaky clean individual who does everything the right way. And when you build that up as your brand, when you have one accusation, it comes back to really kick you in the ass, and it could make it really problematic. So before I pass any real judgment on this, right now, I guess my final takeaway would be the corporate structure is terrible. The corporate structure is terrible because they're in the friends and family plan. The salaries appear to be overinflated, but we have to see how the salaries match up with the amount of work and or responsibility of everybody who's identified on the board of directors. The fact that they didn't come out and expressly deny it proved problematic. The fact that I went on the actual website and I was unable to find a breakdown of how the monies are being allocated. I think that's one of the big giveaways. You know, when you have organizations, when you want to see who's doing what, just go to their website, check out their website, and find out, hey, it'll show, they'll be real transparent. We give 70% of every dollar to, children with cerebral palsy or disabled vets. So let me go back on here, but I couldn't find anything. That name is terrible too. Why not you? This look terrible too. I don't even like the I don't even like the way this website. I don't even like they're gonna ride that Bentley that they spent everybody money on all the way to the bank. Let me pull up this website so y'all can take a look at this website. All right, let's go to the home screen. This is the home screen on the website, which is a crazy looking home screen. Let me see something. Executive director. I'm trying to look and see. Okay, so the executive director is probably the person who's running it, because right now they aren't listed on the actual directory. So we click on about. Why not you? Why not us? Man, it's been going on since. I'm not gonna say this been going on since 2014, but this organization has been in existence since 2014. That's gonna be a lot. That's gonna be a lot of records to go back and. That's gonna be a lot of damn records to go back in and look through to find out how all of this shit was getting spent and if it was accurate. I mean, everything, hey, the face of it looks good. Now, I will tell you, I do think they do have a valid argument if, because when you're a celebrity, like, okay, if DFD creates a foundation, I'm not a celebrity, so nobody give a damn if I pop up and do an appearance somewhere. But there is value in appearances and fundraisers. So let's say as an example, if a, a 100 or $200,000 donation came in for a specific cause, right? But instead of those funds going directly to that cause, Russell Wilson made an appearance using the money from that $200,000 that was received for travel expenses, but he made an appearance on behalf of his organization to raise additional monies. Now we got a little bit of an argument that he using his celebrity status and his appearance to increase the income that they're getting that they can do for their charitable organization. So that's definitely an argument they're going to have, even though their argument wasn't articulated well in their response. So I mean, I don't know, man. Like when I donate to charities, I don't know about y'all, but when I donate to charities, I'm typically not donating to a charity that's like a celebrity based charities. I just seen too many, hey, I'm jaded. I've seen a lot of fraud and a lot of thievery going on in finances. So I'm typically not donating to a charity like, oh, I'm gonna donate to Young Reese's chocolate like on the Boondocks. Nah, I'm typically gonna go with an organization that's well established, that's been around for years. They have a consistent track record. And I'm gonna be honest, a lot of people who donate to these types of organizations, they do it for access. So, like, there are normal people who are gonna donate, like you and me, who maybe donated to this foundation because they want them to do something good. But a lot of people make large donations to this because, hey, if I make a large donation, maybe I can get Russell Wilson and Sierra to come to this particular event, or I could befriend them because there is some other value in having that friendship and cultivating that relationship that can be monetized. So, it's a cold game. If someone has a charitable organization and they're a celebrity, make sure you do your due diligence, because I don't know about y'all, but the last thing I want to do is donate money somewhere for children and they go into some millionaire's brother so he can, play the new Madden and eat Cinnamon Toast Crunch in his nice house. Like, nah, that's just not something I'm gonna do. But there are a lot of resources you can find through open source research. You can actually pull up the annual reports that these companies have to file that'll show you specifically what's going on with the profits, what's going on with the donations, how much they donated, and it can give you it gives you a good picture of how legitimate this organization may be. So far right now, hey, I'm not going to throw them in the pot of they're committing actual fraud. I think it looked a little shady. It looked a little suspect, but I'm not going to go all out. I think I need to see some type of state or federal investigation with some subpoenas to look at their finance records. But the two people who are laughing right now, well, maybe one person, is Future. Future's like, yes, you had a bad season and this allegation came up. That's it. I just wanted to give my initial take on this. Yo, Saturday night, y'all make sure y'all jump in on the live. It's gonna be interesting. I'm gonna do a breakdown of the XXX murder trial. More importantly, I'm gonna talk about why Drake was called as a witness. I had no clue this was going on. Thank God I have a 16-year-old son who is up on current events like that. Because when he explained to me what was going on, I looked in it and I was like, oh, okay, this might be something interesting to talk about, because there is a specific reason why Drake is being called to the stand in this particular murder trial. And I don't blame him. I actually think it's a smart move. If I was the defense attorney, I would call Drake yellow ass to the stand too, because I think it would benefit me. So y'all make sure y'all check that out Saturday. Yo, I'm about to jump off here. I ain't want to go too long because your boy tired. Y'all have a good one. Take care. Be blessed. Let's ride, intellectual savages. Nah, don't say that, man. Don't let's ride, man. Y'all be blessed. Take care. Peace. That's funny.